Hi. I turn this off. Um, it's a song by an Austrian group called STS. It's a cover of a Beatles song. Here Comes the Sun. Da kommt die Sonne in German. Um, I want to talk about the sun for a second, and I want to talk to it in connection to geocentrism and the problems I have with it, in the sense of the current scientific theories, or the status of current science, according what the sun is really doing, and how the Earth is revolving around it, and so on. And when I call myself a geocentrist, I find everything very interesting that's being discussed right now. I find the flat Earth theory very interesting. I find geocentrism very interesting. And one of the reasons why I believe that geocentrism is a very important thing is because everything seems to be directed towards Earth. Like we are like in a sweet spot. We have a certain distance from the sun that makes the Earth not too cold, not too hot, and life is actually viable. And sorry, I have a little cold. It's actually viable and possible on our planet, and that's quite interesting. And the whole issue of this problem, how if science says everything is chaos, everything is high speeds, gigantic distances, rocks hurling through space, wobbling and shooting through space. It may all be fine and good, and it may all come from a great coincidence. It may all come from a an unguided missile, like hitting the sweet spot by chance. But there are many things in our world, like the moon showing us always the same face, and many other things. But the one thing I want to talk about today is Newgrange. Newgrange is an ancient tomb in Ireland, and it's been around for approximately 5,000 years already. And it's a temple, and in the 60s they discovered, in the 1960s they discovered that light on a certain day on the winter solstice enters the tomb on the shortest day of the year, and many people believe that it was built that way. So it seems that the sun actually did the same thing every year, even though it must have changed a little since then, over 5,000 years. There doesn't seem to be any change in the assumed rotation and in the assumed curve around the sun. Everything seems to be stable. Everything seems to be stable to a point that on the shortest day of the year, every year, shortly after sunrise, this beam of light enters the passageway in Newgrange, and every year for 5,000 years. And it works every year, and it's incredible. And I want to play you a little bit. This is National Geographic.
Out of the mists of the Stone Age, this structure has stood since the dawn of recorded history. This rounded tomb, called Newgrange, has stood on the bend of Ireland's River Boyne for more than 5,000 years. It is massive, distinct, and very mysterious. The mound of earth covers a rock passageway, which leads to a central chamber where the ashes and bones of...
It's actually very, very pretty. I mean, I hope you go there once. I'm a big guy, so even when I was like 16, 17 years old, at like 6'6" and probably close to, I don't know, 280, 300 pounds. I had trouble, squeezing in it at the time. But it's a very narrow passageway, and wait, I continued and you listen to the rest.
The dead were placed. Long thought to be just a tomb, in the late 1960s, archaeologists uncovered an amazing secret that shed new light on this ancient structure. On the winter solstice, the longest night and shortest day of the year, a shaft of light enters a perfectly positioned window and lights up the 60-foot corridor that leads to the basin of ancestral bones. An impressive feat of engineering, considering its Stone Age builders possessed only rudimentary technologies.
Is particularly
And that's something that also cracks me up, like the whole notion that the Stone Age builders possessed rudimentary technologies. Actually, I mean, if you leave out the whole technology part, but at the time, people were really looking at the night sky and at the and watching it in amazement. Probably there wasn't as much crap in the air. Also, I mean, they had very clear skies, and they probably in their ways, either as a graph or if, as a drawing, they jotted down details about. And nowadays we always rely on like big agencies, government-run agencies, and our education system, but we don't actually look up in the sky and think about the question if everything we are taught is actually possible or viable in a sense. I mean, let's leave apart the whole thing with the discussion of geocentrism or the Earth being the shape of the Earth, if it's pear-shaped or whatever shape it is. Let's leave it all to the side. But even the question of a Big Bang and chance, chance, and still 5,000 years, for 5,000 years the sun. A beam of sun entering the same passageway, it doesn't do that the rest of the year. So it's one day of the year being the shortest day of the year. And I discussed this once on a Facebook group, and a German-speaking Facebook group. And the one guy said to me, you forget you say it's on the same day every year, but you forget that there is a thing called leap years. And there's one extra day. I said, yeah, but the leap year is taking our calendar and kind of moving it closer to the Earth's calendar in a sense. But still, it's every year we have a shortest day of the year, and on this shortest day, the light enters the tomb every time, and there doesn't seem to be any major change. And I'll show you later another video where they try to. They try to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing, but I'll just continue on with it because it's very pretty. 1 second.
important because it's been proven without doubt that it was very deliberately aligned to sunrise at the winter solstice.
Its facade is of white quartz, restored by archaeologists who believe the mound was originally covered in a smooth stone that reflected the light. The massive stones in the interior were perhaps pulled from the river. The builders probably moved the boulders into position by rolling them on logs. Archaeologists believe it took decades to construct Newgrange. And since life expectancy was short, only about 40 years, the project likely was handed down from generation to the next. Little is known about the Neolithic farming community that created this structure. Why they built it is still a mystery. Perhaps the mound was a place of worship. Historians admit they just don't know.
We know they were used as burial places, but we also think they would have been used as places for ritual gatherings, where a focus for community gatherings, place to honour the ancestors.
For more than 5,000 years, Newgrange has captured the rising sun of the winter solstice. It's a lasting monument to human ingenuity and to a desire as old as mankind. Even then, people strove to understand great forces of nature and to harness them, even if only for a brief moment in time.
So yeah, that was it. Wait, I close this 1 second. Yeah. So, and the another funny thing in a sense is Um, I think this is kind of old. I mean, if you look at the interview of the woman being interviewed, she looks kind of 80ish or 90ish. It doesn't seem to be too new of a clip. And at the time, they were just surprised, and they were very proud to find this tomb of Newgrange, and to not find it, but to discover the added use Newgrange had. But I think in a way, probably they started thinking, what does it actually mean? The sun entering the same little opening, and the sun, the beam of sunlight, like wandering. It's actually like you see it moving through the tomb and through the passageway, and it's actually very expensive to get a ticket to Newgrange on the winter solstice. Only a few select people can get inside, and if you go there as a tourist, as I did, you get like a simulation. You get like the light, shown. It's like a light show they do for you, and it's very very nice, and they explain everything to you. But what does it say that this is working like clockwork, like exactly, not even, it's the whole entrance is like, if I don't know, maybe 20-30 centimeters. I don't know how wide it is, but it isn't very big. It's like a hole in the top of the tomb, and it still works every year since 5,000 years. And if it just moved 1 meter, it would miss it, and the whole show would be over. It would be on the wrong day or whatever. And I found this other video, and it seems like they try to shove down, or like to lessen the Newgrange experience by saying, well, it changed because the beam of light used to go further. One guy claims. I play this clip, and it seems that he's talking about the tilt of the Earth, and how the beam of light after 5,000 years doesn't quite reach to the end of the passageway, although we don't know how far it was intended to go. I mean, it's impressive enough that it's going as far as it does. But let's watch the other clip, and maybe I'll chime in a little bit on that.
We're now inside the passage tomb here at Newgrange, and I'm joined by Professor Tom Ray, who's an interest in astroarchaeology, and he's from the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies. Tell me, Professor, what would the people who built this chamber 5,000 years ago, what would they have seen?
Well, they would have seen something quite different from what we see today. 3,200 BC, when this monument was built.
I mean, the whole thing of him saying they would have seen something quite different. No, they would have seen something almost exactly the same. Even according to his theory, you'll hear it in a minute. I mean, it's very funny. He's trying to. They would have seen something quite different. It's still our universe is still chaotic, and there is no God, and it's all the Big Bang and stuff flying around and rotating on its axis, and it's all being very chaotic, and so. But 5,000 years, it's not a lot of time. The universe is billions of years old, of course, and so he's trying to, they would have seen something quite different. They would have, they would have seen a red beam of light, and it would have been a maybe green laser light. No, they saw almost exactly the same thing we see today. Maybe the stone was a bit fresher, and it was less worn, and there weren't any tourist signs around. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. But let's hear his big difference he's talking about.
The tilt of the Earth's axis is a little bit different than it is now. I think most people know this tilt gives us the seasons. It gives us our winter and our summer. The tilt then was a little bit larger. The net result of that was that the days, the shortest day of the year was a bit shorter, and the longest day of the year was that little bit longer.
I mean, it's the tilt was different, and the difference in 5,000 years, and that's coming up, is as I said, that the light reaches a few meters less. So let's listen to that great big difference that developed over 5,000 years.
It also meant that the sun would have risen a little bit further south on the shortest day of the year. Now, what's very interesting about Newgrange is, I think most people know about the roof box at the entrance, but they mightn't realise that as they walk in, the floor rises, such that the actual floor here is level with the roof box. And that means that when the sun rose 3200 BC, the light would have actually reached across the floor and way back into the chamber there. Nowadays, we have to wait about 11 minutes before the sun actually enters the chamber. The result of that is that the sunlight ends up more or less in the middle of this main chamber here. So,
yeah, that's a big difference. You have to wait 11 minutes. He, of course, hasn't the slightest clue how long you had to wait back then. He assumes that it entered immediately after the sun was rising, and it's all assumption. I mean, but he's trying so desperately to get to have some kind of change in the universe, which isn't really happening, and at least with the sun, it seems that it's very, 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 very not different, but it's very stable. It's like clockwork, as I said. So let's continue onwards.
So the builders of Newgrange actually built it so it was perfect for sunrise in 3200 BC. Nowadays, of course, we can do it with modern equipment very, very easily. But for somebody from 3200 BC to try and actually determine the point of what we call the winter solstice would have been difficult enough. But it does indicate that they were extremely intelligent and very civilized people.
Extremely intelligent and very civilized people, yeah. Civilized they probably were, and they probably knew what was going on in a sense, Still, it's very funny to me that he tries, it's very, very different, The sun only reaches to the end of the passageway, not entirely into the back room, so it doesn't reach, it doesn't reach where it's supposed to reach, because 5,200 whatever years later, there's like it's showing it. I mean, it's like a difference of half a meter, maybe 2 meters difference with how long the beam of sunlight enters the passageway. So I think it's very, very interesting, and it kind of, to me, it proves geocentrism in the sense that even if I love the flat Earth theory, but I can't be sure of anything. But what I'm sure of is that everything is engineered towards us. That everything is engineered towards Earth. That everything is very stable, and I'm pretty sure that people 3,200 years BC who built this place had to do their calculations. Believing that the Earth was there and the sun was revolving around it, and I don't know if they factored in any curvature or whatever, and they did a pretty good job building basically an astrological temple and a tomb, and they have to be applauded for that, and I wish that modern people too would look more towards the stars than into the television set where they watch, Neil deGrasse Tyson or whoever explain the world to us, So take care, God bless, and I'll turn this off. I don't know. I know it doesn't have much production value, but you actually see what I'm doing, so I'm not going to do any intros or whatever. If anybody's watching this, I'm very happy about it, but doing this for my own enjoyment. Take care. 9. Wait a second.